Hey, everybody. Gonna have a little mini lesson here today. Glad you tuned in. I want to talk to you today about endings. We talked about endings and looking back with a lens of, hey, hindsight is 2020. We had a lesson about that a little bit ago. And I think that is a really powerful way to look back at a book once you've finished it and you have more of an understanding of what the author was revealing to you as they were writing. But today we're going to talk about, and I think this is really fun, I want you to explore today the idea that of messiness of endings, that endings are not what they used to be when you were kids and you would read a book. Authors tended to clean up all the loose ends and typically would make some sort of happy growth for typically for the protagonist, but sometimes for many of the characters. Like, I want you to think back to the book Wonder. When you read Wonder, I think the whole fourth or maybe third, fourth, fifth grade read it when you guys were kids, or maybe you didn't. But in the story, the main character Augie, was really struggling mightily in the beginning. He's got a lot of fears. He's got a lot of anxieties. He goes to this school. He has a lot of troubles throughout. He has some friends, but he also has a lot of powerful struggles throughout the book. And at the end of the book, those struggles, those concerns, even the characters who were unkind to him, all at the end rally around him, and they have this really super happy ending where everybody feels they've grown and everybody has some success to celebrate. But I think what you have probably noticed about books the older you get, and now you would be teenagers, and so books are going to be ending more realistic ways, in ways that are messy. So that's what we're going to explore today. I want you to think about your books that you're reading now, or the books that you've finished, especially in the historical fiction unit, because I think all of those end in these imperfect ways. So we're going to explore that, and you can write about it, think about it in terms of one character, the main character, the protagonist, or a minor character, and try to have some fun with how this character, it ends up with something imperfect at the end. It kind of like, oh, well, it's not great. And I know some of you are reading The Hunger Games and the series hasn't ended. It doesn't end till Mockingjay, but a bunch of other kids have been reading the series, revisiting it, or starting it for the first time. And I think it's a perfect example. I think Suzanne Collins does an amazing job of, at the end, making us simultaneously hopeful and happy and also brokenhearted and miserable. And I think that's to be expected. And I think as you think about yourselves preparing for high school and reading beyond that and life beyond that, is to really have these expectations that, there is no perfect pearl. And I think some of you read what's it called? Across Five Aprils. And I think there's Words of the Wiser from I think his name is Red. Character's name is Red. He's the owner of the newspaper. And he says, "Don't expect peace to be a perfect pearl, Jeff." And I think that life is not the ending of the war won't be a perfect pearl. I think is really something to explore. Like, how is the ending? How is the future? How is the resolution? Complicated and messy. So you can have fun with that. And I know some of you are really artistic and you enjoy expressing it that way. So maybe that's something you could do, is like express this sort of uncomfortable ending, like with The Outsiders. Definitely very uncomfortable ending, Pony Boy. But, I was thinking about some characters you might want to consider too, those of you who are exploring The Giver. I think wondering what might happen, even if the author, Lois Lowry, creates this really interesting character of the dad in The Giver, and we don't know what happens to the dad, but I think it could be super fun to explore given his dialogue, especially when Jonas goes to view the dad at work. I won't tell you more about that if you haven't gotten to that part yet, but what is going to happen to the dad now? What happens to a man like that in light of the ending? Like, what's his messy life going to look like? What would Asher's life look like? So you could even get, creative in terms of reflecting on how the ending might be that was not explored by the author for certain characters, what that might look like, and how it's not going to be a perfect pearl by any means. And know that going forward, and I mean, how do we take this forward? Also, I'd like to talk about how any of these activities can also be applied to your own life. Like once we're back at school, right? What might the end of this pandemic look like? Because it's going to end. I mean, the Spanish flu ended, right? I don't think any of us even talked about it or worried about it at all until recently. So what aspects of this I try to predict? It's going to have a messy ending. And you're old enough to start to think like, what might that be? And not to worry, but just to be thoughtful and a little bit more realistic and more adults, I suppose. And you're thinking about, like, I just can't wait till life goes back to normal. I think you're smart enough to know that life will be not normal. In what ways might it not be normal and not be, not have a little red bow at the top and perfect at the end, like Wonder was for Augie. So that's what we're going to talk about, is messiness. I would like you to explore it. I'd like you to write some kind of writing about thinking about reading, a water about it. Be prepared. You have meetings. If you look at the calendar, some of you are going to, I'm breaking up the meetings so I can be at all of them, because toggling between them was really not working. So look and see. Some of you, I think, are Wednesday. Some of you are Thursday for your group meetings, and be prepared to talk about this messiness of your endings and have some fun with it and be creative about it and thoughtful about it, and maybe prepare to share some ideas based on what you have read and what you do know about the pandemic and how you feel like it won't be a perfect pearl, and how it can end in ways that are just realistic, like real life, which is messiness. So that is our goal for today. If you have any questions, of course, just shoot me a quick email and I will answer it as soon as possible. Okay, stay safe. Bye.